I call to order the Valentine's Day edition, 2022, of the Henderson County Board of Public Education Board meeting. If you all would rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Before we get going on the agenda, I am going to make a few adjustments to the agenda. The first is going to be moving up the current face covering guidance and policy, which is new business part A, along with return to learn under the superintendent's report to right after board member observations. And also we are going to be tabling item E from new business today. With those changes in mind, I will accept a motion to approve the agenda as presented there.
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is approved. Program highlight, Dr. Wendy Fry. Welcome.
Good afternoon. The clicker.
We need to do something.
It is my pleasure to bring to you the board highlight tonight, as well as recognitions. I'm going to speak with you about our National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. First of all, I want to preview this information by reminding you that Henderson County is one of 79 districts in the whole nation, with 20% of our staff who are nationally board certified. We have 183 who are certified in this district. You see the research around the importance of a national board certification and the payoffs that this can have for our students. Through this process, these are the things that are happening, peer-reviewed, performance-based process, similar to a professional certification you would see in other areas. Our teachers are proving their ability to advance student learning and achievement. We operate in a cohort model, and I think that that contributes much to our success. Look at that approximate time commitment. 400 to 600 hours. It is intensely reflective. They are defining their why. Why is it they got into this business, and why are they staying? Why do they do the things that they do? These are the 4 areas of focus, culminating in a test, a knowledge of content and pedagogy. It is my pleasure tonight, and as I read these names, if you are in attendance, I would love for you to join me at the front and be recognized publicly for this achievement. First of all, Kelsey Knock from Rugby Middle School. Please stay, yes. Joanne Sims Rickert from Upward Elementary School. Kendra Taylor from North Henderson High School. You may have heard spring sports started today, and Kendra's a coach, and it won't surprise you that many of the folks we're recognizing tonight also have coaching responsibilities. And Hannah Campbell from Clear Creek Elementary School. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you our newly certified National Board teachers. We're so proud of you. Thank you so much. Let's do a picture. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Next, I want to talk with you about the recertification process. This occurs every 5 years. It is a considerable amount of work as well. I want to tell you that every teacher who attempted renewal in Henderson County this year passed, 100% pass rate, and that continues to happen in Henderson County. At this time, I'd like to introduce and ask again for those who are here in attendance to join me up front. We have 16 recertified teachers. The first 8 appear here. Alicia Allman from Upward Elementary School. I know Gary Blackwell is here from North Henderson High School. One of my former students. Dana Brasnell from West Henderson High School. I think she's coaching also. Beverly Buckley from Glen Marlowe Elementary School. Adam Chacon, Hendersonville High School. Adam's coaching also. Doyle Chambers, Mills River Elementary School. Congratulations. Yes. Christian Drake, Apple Valley Middle School. And I saw Candace Greedy come in from Hendersonville Elementary. We have 8 more. Mary Wade Griner unfortunately left us earlier this year for some family responsibilities. We sure hope she'll come back our way soon, but we wanted to go ahead and recognize her because we own her as one of our own as well. Kaylee Eisenhower from Hendersonville Elementary School. Karen Maxon, Rugby Middle School, was unable to be here tonight. Mandy Parr couldn't be with us either. You know Mandy's coaching somewhere, Flat Rock Middle School. Leanne Perry, counselor at Rugby Middle School. I'm not sure if Leanne is here tonight. Bethany Phyllis, Hendersonville High School. Come on up. Sherry Shipman, Upward Elementary School. And Sergey Zalewski from West Henderson High School. Let's give him a round of applause. He couldn't be here tonight. I present to you, board members, the finest teachers in North Carolina in Henderson County and the most newly recertified teachers. Congratulations. Thanks, Molly. We are so privileged in this district to have these folks and so many like them. I could not talk about National Board process without talking about Lynn Carter. Can I get an amen, Dr. Revis? She's retired from Henderson County Public Schools, was a rock star, stellar master teacher, and continues to mentor our National Board teachers and has done so for over 20 years. She meets regularly with them. She reads every word they write and gives them such productive feedback. And she believes in this process, and she'll be the first to tell you this is the best professional development that she has ever experienced. I want to leave you with this statistic. Nationally, teachers who attempt this process, the pass rate is around 40% the first time through. Henderson County's is 70%, and I believe it is largely in part to the work of Lynn Carter. So thank you to her. I know she's listening, and congratulations to all of you for your achievement. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fry. Next up, we're going to have board chair observations. I've got two observations today. The first, I want to congratulate Ray Ford and the East Henderson High School girls wrestling team for the first women's state champion wrestler, Miss Eva Kiefalver of East Henderson. What a great accomplishment for Henderson County. And also, one of our own, Miss Doc Case, was recently named to the Ed Foundation Hall of Fame after an esteemed career here at Henderson County Public Schools, and we congratulate you very much. Next up, we'll have board member observations. None from this side of the room? All right. Moving on, Dr. Bryant, we're going to be moving on to Return to Learn and to the current face covering guidance and policy.
Thank you, Mr. Craven and members of the board. I will get started as the slides here get queued up and take us right to where we often start as we look at the trend data in our community and that which we're experiencing. The last time that we met, we saw a sharp sloped line on its way to increase as our community experienced the Omicron surge. What we see now is the exact opposite, and it's exciting to be able to share this and to report that as you see the descending slope of that line considerable in the opposite direction. When we look at our community, again, talking about perspective, this is what we saw as it related to January 8th. We were looking at a significant impact across the board when you were looking at rolling averages and daily case counts per 100,000 people. Once again, as of February the 11th, we're seeing sharp and steady declines across our community, across the state, and certainly across the country. There is the county alert system that this board is familiar with, and that just gives us some information, sort of a snapshot. This is, again, as of February the 11th, about cases that you're seeing, cases per 100,000, the percent positivity in our community, the percent vaccinated, and then, of course, hospital admissions. The board has seen this before, and again, recognizing that all of this data reflects significant decreases in the impact across our community. The transmission rates for our state and across the state still remain in that high category. This is a snapshot from Tuesday, February 1st through Monday, February the 7th, but that was the most up-to-date at the time. Important to know, again, we've been tracking and communicating throughout this period of time the COVID dashboard that our board is familiar with and our community is familiar with. We've seen this slide every single time since July of 2020 as we talked about how we would communicate what information we can provide and what we can't. In light of our current operations, we have been operating as face coverings being required for students, staff, and adult visitors when indoor and school settings and on school properties unless a legal exception applies since January 10th of 2022. And face coverings are required while traveling on buses or other group transportation settings. In terms of looking at what that, I'm going to come back here for a second. There we go. This is the face covering policies as we talk about these impacts and the data sets that influence the board's decision and discussion. This is what it looks like across the state. We've shown you this slide as it relates to the decisions that are present because each Board of Education, as this board is well aware, must make a determination and set policy on this at least once a month. When we think about the Strong Schools Toolkit, which has been part of the guiding document for school systems across the state of North Carolina, last Thursday there was a significant update to the toolkit. They brought together healthcare leaders in an early webinar, then they brought together superintendents and school leaders in the late afternoon, and then published the update for all of the public in North Carolina late on the afternoon of Thursday the 10th. And in short, here was the major revision. The major revision removed the requirement and the recommendation to contact trace and to quarantine asymptomatic individuals. Again, I want to note that was a huge change because it was one of the challenge points and the pinch points for school system operations. This board spent a great deal of time talking about the concerns related to the number of students who would potentially be quarantined or were quarantined and the interruptions to their educational access, especially when the core focus was the preservation of face-to-face learning opportunities and the opportunity for that. Note the second bullet there, that while the exclusion is no longer required or recommended when a case is identified in that setting, there still is an expectation that notifications are made and that those notifications are made to the public so that an individual can be aware that there is a positive case in their child's school. With that in mind, that particular piece. What we want to share with you is a change in our current practices based on that updated guidance and what our community can expect moving forward. The toolkit gives boards an opportunity, and ultimately school system administration, the ability to choose really one of three paths. You can continue to contact trace and just notify the people who are determined to be close contacts, even though they don't have to be excluded from the environment and they don't have to be quarantined. You could provide group level notifications just for a child's class or for a grade level or for a grade level team. Or you can provide school level notifications that indicate there are X number of cases in the school. And you can do that on a daily basis or a weekly basis. We do the daily through our dashboard. This board and the community is familiar with it, that each day we report the number of positive cases in any school affected environment. Those show up on the following business day on our dashboard. What we're proposing to the board at this time is, in order to meet that expectation, that we would continue our daily notification dashboard moving forward based on that revision, and then we would provide a weekly notification at the school level. So one might expect a call on Friday afternoon. If your child attends Atkinson Elementary, then on Friday afternoon you'd get a call from the principal that says, "Hi, this is the principal, and this week we've had X number of cases among staff and X number of cases among students," and that's it. And then we would have provided the notification requirements that are necessary to each individual school community. And because this is in effect right now, we would also wipe our current dashboard clean. The one that's online right now has been in effect since the start of the school year. It has been cumulative cases across the board. This is a significant change in our practice, and so tomorrow we'd start with a new dashboard. Now I'm going to pause right there for a moment, because that's a lot of information, and I want to make sure that's clear. Two big revisions to the toolkit. Most significant one, boards across the state have been lobbying for a change to the quarantine guidance. Far too restrictive, far too many students being removed from school environments. We've talked about that many, many times in this space. That is no longer recommended, and it's no longer required. So who will be excluded from a school environment? A positive case. That's it. Those are the only ones. Regardless of vaccination status, regardless of face covering or not, any of those pieces, those are not factors in that determination. The second thing is we have a duty to provide notifications. And our current notification system is the dashboard that lives online. Anyone can access it at any time. That tallies the daily case counts. And then we'd provide a weekly notification by school level. Questions from the board?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So does that mean that if somebody is symptomatic, they are not going to be required to stay home? If they were like in that cluster of, I don't know, like 5 close contacts?
So the symptomatic piece has been one that we're always looking at, like you're making that decision, but this guidance specifically is not directing asymptomatic individuals.
Okay.
From not being.
So if they're symptomatic with any cold symptoms, they have to stay home?
And that's been common practice pre-COVID, right? The idea of keeping someone home so that they don't make other people sick has been part of our practice. We know we all grew up in a time when people still came to school even when they were sick and were encouraged to do so. But symptomatic individuals should still choose to isolate. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I just want to, so our percent positivity, 19.66, and we are still in a high county, correct?
The high county is referring to the transmission rate. Yes, sir.
That's right. And I think there have been, I don't know who on the board, I'm just saying there have been some members on the board that how long have we been quarantining? 2 years? How long have we been quarantining?
2 years.
It just almost gets me that we've been quarantining people for 2 years, and these are still the same numbers that we've had for 2 years, and now we're saying we don't have to quarantine. It's just a shame that we've been sending people home for 2 years and not getting a good education. It makes me, and I know it's not the board's fault, and I know it's not the superintendent, it's not the admins, it's nobody's, but it's just a shame that we're sitting up here on the school board sending people home for 2 years that didn't need to be sent home.
We weren't sending them home, though, Jay.
I know.
Health Department.
No, we weren't, but they were being sent home.
Agreed.
They were being sent home unnecessarily, sacrificing the education that is so hard to complete. And, you know, I know, we did not send them home, but they were sent home by whoever. And it's just.
And to your point, Mr. Egoff, I think it's really, really critical to restate that boards of education and school district leaders have been advocating for this change for a long, long time. You're right. It is very difficult because this is not unique to Henderson County. This is all counties in the state of North Carolina have been having to adhere to this guidance, and it's been challenging for everyone. But your point is well made, because what we have been doing is every time we have an opportunity to speak with the Department of Health and Human Services with regard to that guidance, we've advocated for those pieces, right? And so to your point, this is welcome news. This has been something that this board and boards of education across the state have been asking for. And so now it can be applied in this space. Any other questions about the notifications? Again, I just want to highlight this word one more time, weekly notifications. Previously, we were providing daily alert calls. We remember we got those daily alert calls and we were all kind of tired of getting them and said, let's be done with those. This is a weekly alert call that will come from your school based on total cases at that time. Again, Senate Bill 654, we're all very, very familiar with this one. This is why we are here. We are required to adopt a policy with regard to face coverings, and we have to vote on it at least once a month. I want to give a final slide here because we had been talking previously about test to stay. Test to stay was a strategy for allowing folks to choose to participate in testing that would not require them to quarantine when they were determined to be close contacts. As you might imagine, this is completely unnecessary now. And so test to stay is not an initiative that we will be engaging in. It will not be applied across the school system. It is not necessary based on the revised guidance. So with that in mind, this is the final slide. You've seen it before. We've talked about it previously. Glad to answer any other questions before the board deliberates, Mr. Chairman.
Questions, comments?
I don't have a question. 5 weeks ago, our healthcare professionals came here and basically begged us for help to lower the transmissions at the hospitals. I think we've done that. I have never voted without speaking to at least 2 of the people who spoke 5 weeks ago, and I was very happy to hear about the huge decline in cases since that 5 weeks, and I feel in a lot of ways we acted as a community. We were asked for help from our healthcare professionals. We did our part, whether it saved 1% of hospitalizations, 10%, we don't know, but I do think we did our part, in seeing the decline is just the reward.
Decline has been significant.
Dr. Bryan, has our workforce stabilized?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that question. What we've also seen in that period of time is a significant increase in the number of folks who are able to report to work, ultimately not being COVID positive themselves, having a COVID positive case in their home, or being under a directed quarantine order. Remember, that was that exponential factor, and ultimately was putting us at risk of being able to stay open. And as this board deliberated over last time, we talked about how that impacted 3 of our school environments right before our last meeting, that we had 3 that had to move to a virtual space because of that. We have seen our workforce stabilize considerably. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that.
So it's not lost on me that a few weeks ago we had health leaders in here to talk to us about a school system that's full of 13,500 children. And I think one of the most important questions that I asked that day were how many of Henderson County's children in the hospital or have died from COVID. And it was, they did not know. And we're here trying to advocate for kids and keep kids safe. It is known, you can read in many different opinion pieces from various doctors that kids being kept home, losing contact at school, losing food at school. It's a hardship on their parents when they have to stay home and quarantine unnecessarily. a loss of income, and maybe even being let go from jobs because they are, calling in too many times and can't show up. The mental health crisis in our school system, in our county, is at an all-time high. I have spoken with various agencies that deal with mental health in our schools and in our kids, and it is real, and it's the speech loss from our children, that the teachers cannot hear what they're saying and cannot correct them because they have a mask on their face. The depression because they cannot see their peers smiling at them. They don't know how to take if their teacher corrects them, they don't know how to take that, like if a teacher's upset or angry. This has been a huge, I don't even know what word I want to say, burden, I guess would be the correct one, on our children. Our children have been told that they're responsible for bringing a sickness home to a grandmother and putting them in the hospital. They're afraid to breathe around other people. And it is not lost on me that the CDC has maintained their stake in the ground for 23 months, that we all must mask, that we all must quarantine, that we must stay 6 feet away from each other. And our children have been impacted more than any other person. Adults, we can handle that, but the children, they have had a really hard time with this. And then the CDC came out last month and said, well, cloth masks are no longer effective. And then, this board voted to keep those kids in cloth masks for 5 more weeks. None of that is lost on me. And I hope that this school system can rally around these children once we get the sense of normalcy back, and help these children get appointments with providers, and bring more therapists into our school to help them, more speech pathologists, because we have kids that, now are in 2nd grade that have never had a normal year of school. And I feel it's imperative that we move on with this and move away from it, and not change our vote in a month or 2 months to put masks back on. We've got to do this for the sake of our kids.
I just want to unpack a couple of points. When you had asked about the hospitalizations of children, I think they had mentioned to you, we don't have a pediatric ICU here, so there were Henderson County students that were at Mission Hospital. It wasn't that they said they didn't know.
No, they weren't, there weren't.
Well, Mission has that number. I mean, Mission is.
Right, yeah, I got that number from
Right.
Mission, though.
And the other thing was that there were 2 doctors who came and said, we have patients who have said that they know that they unfortunately caught it from their school-age child. So we can't say that that didn't exist, and I certainly would not call those
Quiet, please.
I would not call those healthcare professionals, AKA heroes, liars. in
I
saying
did
that.
not call them liars. I never
Right.
said that. I said
But
they didn't have the data.
But they did say that. They had patients who said that they were certain that they had caught it from their students, and that was,
Well, I caught COVID on December 20th, and I don't know where I got it. I mean, you can't turn around and
most
say.
people don't know. That's true.
Okay. So, based on this latest guidance, I think the only question I have is I know that North Carolina DPI is talking about doing this, or DHHS, February 21st. Today, we're going to be voting on mask mandates per your recommendation, and masks being optional. Would we have to quarantine kids for 4 days if masks were made optional tomorrow?
I don't expect that would be the case, sir.
Okay, so what is your recommendation on masking in Henderson County right now?
Based on the data that we've seen here, the significant trend data, the stabilization of our workforce and our operations, and the feedback from this board, and the decision that was discussed even previously, it'd be my recommendation to move to optional immediately.
I would like to make that motion.
I'd like to second that motion.
Yep, I'd like to make that motion to go ahead and make mask optional. We have a second. We're going to go ahead and do a voice vote like we have all along. So, Mr. Bridges, yes or no?
Yes.
Mrs. Case, yes or no?
Yes.
Mrs. Holt, yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Egoff, yes or no?
Sir?
Mrs. Caskey, yes or no?
Yes.
Dr. Revis, yes or no?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, passes 7-0. All right,
I want to say,
what I would like to do after this meeting, Dr. Bryant, is I would like you to make sure that you talk to Mr. Steve Smith about the quarantining guidelines and our desire to not have any asymptomatic kids quarantined for this week, even if we have mask off starting this week. That is our desire here. It's my desire, as the chair and the vice chair said, yes, I'm not sure of everyone else's desire there, but just if you could relay that message, I'd be
Understood. Yes, sir.
appreciated.
Thank you.
All right,
the one thing that I want to say about this board and this community, I tell my kids this. I tell them, try to understand what the other person says. You don't have to agree, but try to understand. And I think this community has stopped trying to understand. And sometimes this board doesn't show it, but it's true. We do try to understand what the others say. And obviously, we don't agree a lot. Well, no, on some things. We do agree, but not on everything. I'll say that. I'm sorry. Said that wrong. But I just encourage everybody to try to understand better and try to understand harder, and just like we try to do. And you don't have to agree. That doesn't mean you're giving in. Just try to understand, and we need to all just take a step back and work together and do better for our kids, all working together. Understand better. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Egoff. Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, we're going to be moving on. Next is going to be public comment. We have 37 public comments today. I've got, from our digital public comments, we had 51 total comments this month, or this week, actually. 17 were no mask mandate. 7 were no mask mandate and no quarantines. 17 for optional masks, and then 10 for keeping the mask mandate. So those are the totals from this week. So we'll go ahead. Like I said, there are 37 public comments, so we're going to do 1 minute apiece. And the first person up is going to be Maddie Fischler. You actually get 3 minutes.
Before masks when masks were optional, there was a lot of my classmates out sick, and even some of my teachers, and nobody liked that because we all had different subs, and it was really weird. But when masks weren't optional, I've only had like 1 or 2 people out in every class, and that's still a lot, but it's not as much as it was. And there's only been like 1 teacher out, and that was for they were sick with not COVID, with flu. And so I think we should keep the masks on.
Thank you. Next up is Aaron Fischler. One minute, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, you guys have made your decision on the masks. I will say that I think the evidence has been showing that they work. I would have liked to see them stay on a little while longer, but you guys have made your decision on that, so I'll move on. There's been a lot of discussion in the national news regarding school boards, not for masks, but for teaching content. Things like actual history, U.S. history, European history, World War II, the Holocaust. We've been seeing banning of books. We've been seeing state legislatures going against teaching actual history, whitewashing history, if you will. And I would like to urge you guys to go against that. It's very important that our children be exposed to all of history, good or bad. I'm sure we all know the phrase, those who do not learn from the past are destined to repeat it, and I would really like that as a Jewish person to not happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Next up is Vance McGraw. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, sir. There's actually several here that have asked their minutes to be yielded to me, and I would ask that they be yielded in total consecutively.
We are not going to yield time. You have 1 minute.
Okay? So you guys discussed the guidance being handed down from the Strong Schools Toolkit. What I would add to that, and this information is available through public records research and asking for it. There's a contract that has been signed here in Henderson County, and this contract is between the health department here locally and the state health department. Now, I know you guys are just taking guidance that's being handed down, I get that. But until the contract is broken, any guidance that continues to flow down is gonna be expected to be in compliance with. You guys are gonna be forced right back into compliance with that guidance. There's a tremendous amount of information here. I have prepared all of these brochures, all these documents for you. I would again ask respectively to allow me to continue to speak about this because it is factual. The information is all right there for you guys to look at.
Thank you, sir. Next up is going to be Courtney McCall. She choose? No, sir. Aaron Purcell. You've done it before. Great job. Quiet. Mr. Campbell, please.
So, Mr. Chairman, the board policy of the Henderson County Schools, which obviously predates any of these issues, states that during the public comment period, the board chair will recognize speakers in the order in which they signed in. Substitute speakers will not be permitted, and speakers may not donate any portion of their time to another speaker. So board policy does not provide for donating time to a speaker.
Thank you, sir. So next up, you can. You're very welcome to hand those out. We'll take this. Would you like to talk? You're up next, Mr. Purcell. Isla Kimsey. Gloria Kimsey. Piper Kimsey. Melissa Holland.
Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Holland.
What you're doing is unconstitutional and illegal actions. Just because you made a decision today, you're still accountable for what you did before. Each one of you has an oath that you signed of office, 160A to 161 oath of office, the North Carolina Constitution and the United States of America Constitution. Also, there is a letter stated by our own Secretary of Department of Health, Mr. Kinsley. The toolkit itself is not a legal enforceable document. We're seeing that in Rutherford County and Iredell. They have lawsuits going on. Pay attention. Also in there too is the Code of Ethics of School Board Members, Policy 2120. Also, Policy 21116, removal of office. Pay attention, people. If you come back in a few weeks, I'll be back again.
I believe this is Ellie Sue Mayton. Monty McCraw. Kim Frost. Indion Jackson. Welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Have y'all ever heard of the Kingdom of Happy Land? All right, so it was a kingdom, and it had one queen, two kings. The kings were brothers, right? And it was located just south of North Carolina, right north of South Carolina. And it was a community of people. They had schools, they had a church, or they had a school, they had a church. Each house had its own garden. The money circulated within the community. They were self-sufficient. When the railroad was built here, that's when the community kind of dismantled, and the people started to move back up towards the Hendersonville. But it was located around the Tuxedo area. Why don't we learn that in all of our Henderson County schools? We need to really talk about critical race theory. That's all.
Please don't cuss in here. Next up is Tay Brown. Welcome, Mr. Brown.
Hello, hello. So thanks for all you do again. Thanks for hearing me out. And thanks for God for giving me this breath and opportunity to speak to you again. So as I was reading my Bible verse, my daily Bible verse this morning, I'll share it with you. It's love is patient, love is kind, love is not going to envy anybody else. It's not boastful. It's not insistent on our own way. And on the agenda, I put that I was going to speak about a Godcidence, something that was ordained before I was in my mother's stomach. It's in the book of Jeremiah. And so I don't believe it's a coincidence how today we talk about love on Valentine's Day, nor is it a coincidence how it was my Bible verse as well, too. So I'd like us to be reminded of the patience that Corona has instilled in us and will continue to do so. It's not a coincidence. Also, patience is one of the greatest virtues. And so with that being said, I also don't believe it's a coincidence in Spanish. It's Dia de Amor y Amistad. So let's remember that patience and love for all our kind workers and our frontline workers and medical staff in the school systems as we move forward too. And let's remember that love is not boastful or insistent on our own ways as we move forward throughout this bit. And so I just want to remind us what love is for all those in front of us and those in the school systems.
Thank you. Mary Ellen Custon. Welcome.
Thank you so much, and thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Mary Ellen Custon. I think we can all agree that none of us want to deal with the heartbreaks and inconveniences of COVID anymore, and the board should be commended for utilizing COVID relief money provided through ESSER funds that has helped keep our schools open and our classrooms back on track. We still have some way to go, of course. But to put it bluntly, the funds meant to help us get through COVID are essentially wasted if we're not trying to stop the spread of the disease. Our school resources must be used wisely. Think about it. Should our schools get funding to provide driver's ed without teaching kids to buckle up? Or should our football programs get money without kids wearing helmets? No, of course not. That's why those who hold the purse strings to public funds must ensure they're being used wisely. That's just good business, and it's good public policy. And our school board should be applauded for doing that. I know what policy looks like also. I happen to have a master's degree in public policy that my Southern public education got me. I want to thank you all so much for doing what needs to be done. And instead of wasting time on QAnon nonsense, let's get back to focusing on the issues that matter, preparing and supporting the next generation to succeed in the 21st century. Thank you.
Next up is Michelle Henderson. Welcome, Ms. Henderson.
My name is Michelle Henderson. I have a 5th grader who is suffering from extreme bullying. He has had a police report filed on him back in October because of a school shooting incident that he wrote on school property. I found out about it by the slip of a tongue of the principal. Since then, I do not know what his reprimandations have been. I just know one thing: he continues to harass her until I took her out of school. She's in grave danger to be in school around him. Not only is he sending out friends to be mean and angry to her, he sent one student to actually physically harm her. And I need to know exactly what's going to be done about this. we're too busy with masks and all these other mandates. Where's our zero bully tolerance? And he is claiming to be pansexual, and I think he's being protected.
Next up, Beth Campbell.
I was going to yield my time so that she could have more time to tell you what she needed to tell you, because there's a lot y'all need to hear about that situation. So if you're interested, we can get you more information about what's going on in some of your schools, because it's not being addressed by the board. It's not being addressed by our superintendent. There's a lot of issues that are not being addressed. Thank you for removing the masks. This should have been done a long time ago. You talked about the hospital and the experts saying this is our kids' fault. Irregardless of what adults say to adults, telling a 6th grade student that, Ms. Caskey, is inexcusable. We don't blame kids for COVID. They have nothing to do with any of this. They have been the victims of COVID since the very beginning. There is a lot that needs to be done in Henderson County. There is a lot that needs to be done with bullying. And it starts with certain people that are sitting in front of us today.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Next up is Sheila Dale. Welcome, Ms. Dale.
Thank you, and thank you so much for removing the mask, making it optional, as you should have a long, long time ago. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Amy, for fighting on behalf of the children and for being honest. The rest of you have stood in fear, and it's really showing on the life of our children. My granddaughter, who loved preschool, has fought her mother for the first year ever. She's in kindergarten to go to school. She cries. Sad. It's really sad. The story that you just heard, I know you are very well aware of it. This is really a sad state we are. CRT, bullying, the only thing that's tolerable is if you are LGBT. CRT is crap. No other bullying is recognized. This child, if you knew her name, you all should be ashamed of yourself. Literally.
I don't know that. Jackie Kilgore. Welcome.
You already voted on masks, so I'll just kind of reiterate my thoughts on that. The very small percentage of benefit that the masks may provide at this point is not worth the very large percentage of kids who now have anxiety and depression, are behind developmentally and academically, and are having physical side effects from the masks. Did you watch the Super Bowl? It doesn't make sense. It hasn't made sense. We've been packing stadiums and concerts for months now, but our kids, the ones who are least affected by the virus, have had to wear masks at school at their desk. As a society, we're supposed to be looking out for the best interest of our children, not leaving them behind. The virus will continue to mutate. The back and forth policy changes is really confusing and disruptive. I've heard that from teachers as well. When I told my 7-year-old that she had to put a mask back on after your last vote, she immediately started crying. It was heartbreaking. Masks need to be kept or made and kept optional. Please keep them optional.
Thank you. Crystal Watson. Katie Gash. Welcome, Ms. Gash.
Hello, everyone. Dear peers, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for being open and available to hearing from the teachers, the parents, and the students of our district. And thank you for your willingness to revisit decisions, revisit mandates, and adjust to suit the needs of the situation. I've been here each meeting for the past 5 or 6 months, and it does hurt my heart that not all speakers or audience members show respectful behavior, and not all speakers recognize or show appreciation for the incredibly hard work of our school board, our teachers, our administrators, and our school staffs. This should not be a podium, and this should not be a place where mean words or disparaging comments are made. Our children are watching, and we are admonished to let our words be few and seasoned with grace. My time is short. I do not have any specific requests. I simply wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cash. Next up is going to be Pam Alexander. Ms. Alexander? Okay. Gary Pritchard? Welcome, sir.
Oh, I would like to congratulate you all on these decisions you made. I'm impressed of the comments that were brought up and trends that are being discussed, and those are all very encouraging. I'd like to introduce myself briefly and make 2 points. I'm Dr. Gary Prector. I've been a pulmonary critical care physician in the Air for 25 years. I'm a retired colonel in the Air Force and have quadruple board certifications and spoken nationally and internationally, written book chapters and articles in scientific journals concerning infectious diseases. There are 2 things that I could point out with a great deal of information to back it up, but the masks and the vaccines are ineffective for children 3 to 18. They don't work, they're a net negative. I think that's already been brought up a number of times about the masks, but it's also true about the vaccines, and that may come up in your deliberations in the future. So I wish you the best in discussing all the data that's available on those 2 items. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Anthony Cantania. Welcome, sir.
Happy Valentine's Day to you all.
You as well.
Was a gift that you gave us. My worry, though, it will be taken away. Obviously, everyone's views that have been expressed, I have to agree with. If there's any way for you to make it effective immediately, that would be great.
It is. It's effective as of tomorrow morning.
Awesome. My children will have a much better time getting up and going to school. The mornings have been tough, I gotta tell you. And then if there's any way, I don't know if there's a provision that could be, we can't go back and forth here anymore. We have to be done. This just can't happen. It's literally torturing our children, and to sacrifice them potentially to protect adults, this is so, pardon the expression, ass backwards. I mean, I would personally give my life to save my children's life. I'm sure you all feel the same. Let's not do this anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca Moon. Welcome, ma'am.
I won't be long. I had originally yielded my time to Vance McGraw, but since he could not share information that he has researched and compiled, I would just ask that each and every one of you please read this information that he has presented you, read it thoroughly, and then you can research it yourself and make decisions for yourself. But I do thank you for the decision you made today about the mask, and thank you for everything. But please, please read this information.
Thank you, ma'am. Doug Moon. Welcome, sir.
Well, I'm the same. I was going to give my time to Vance, but being Valentine's Day, I'm going to follow my wife and say, please do what she asks you to do, like I have to do. I'm a product of your system. 12 years at Edneyville High School. It doesn't exist anymore, but still a yellow jacket, proud of it. We had 300 kids in the whole school, okay? We were proud of our school and proud of the circle we were in. Now it's basketball season, football season's gone, it's basketball season, a big circle. We're all in that circle. With this latest pandemic virus thing, our circles have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. And now I think, last I saw, you lost 2,000 kids to homeschooling and outside schooling and more. So the circles are getting smaller, guys, and the individual circles are getting smaller. All kids want to be in a big circle. We all want to be in a circle. Thank you for the stand you took to get that circle open back up. Let's keep it big. Let's stay in it. Let's keep making the kids healthy and proud to be a part of the school system. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, sir. Next is McKenna Norman. And she's a student. She'll get 3 minutes. Welcome.
Hi, my speech doesn't really apply since you voted, but I'll still share it with you.
Sure.
I'm in 7th grade. My parents have taught me to have courage and stand up for what I believe in and ask the difficult questions when they needed to be. And I came here today to share how I and how my peers felt about the past decisions and what's been going on. And it's hard to understand why we were able to go to church and out to dinner and to the mall and after school sport and club activities without the mask, but we only had to wear them during school hours. Or why we were being made to feel like we were a danger to others if we chose not to wear a mask. Or why we were being treated differently based on our vaccination status, even when vaccinated students can catch and spread COVID just like unvaccinated students. Why is our personal medical choices no longer private? Why should we trust other adults more than our own parents to make decisions that affect us medically? Why does school no longer feel like a positive environment to learn in? We've always been taught to encouraged to speak up when we feel uncomfortable or if something doesn't feel right. Well, I'm here to say that we were uncomfortable and we were struggling with the masks and we were tired of not being able to have a voice in our lives. Thank you for your time and happy Valentine's Day.
Oh, thank you so much. Next up is Alyssa Norman. She did awesome.
Thank you for the decision you made. It's hard to follow such an amazing young lady, but I'll do my best. She's the reason I'm here, her and the thousands of other amazing children like her. Clearly, my speech doesn't necessarily apply, but just food for thought, because I think we all know that COVID isn't going anywhere. So let's please remember that, let's see. Let's not ask our children to be forced to do something that we're, as adults, are not willing to do ourselves. And please remember that it's not the responsibility of ending a global health pandemic to be put on the shoulders of only our children, only during school hours. That's not fair. We've lost 2 years, and I really hope that we, can go forward because they deserve better, and I really hope we don't lose any more. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Daniel Andriotta.
Thank you so much. As Ronald Reagan said, it's a good idea to trust but verify. That's probably what a lot of people will be doing going forward. I appreciate your decision today. I hope you will think about a couple of messages that have been sent tied to some of this back and forth decisions. One is that some of you seldom, if ever, wear masks in public. You certainly don't wear them universally all the time. And so that sends one of two messages. Either I'm above it, or I don't believe it, and it's not a problem for me, but I'm okay putting it on someone else's child. That can never happen again. Can never happen again. And I hope that I appreciate the fact that you made this effective immediately. And I hope that going forward, you will understand that there's this paper called the Constitution. And no crisis justifies government taking freedom away that we all know we don't get back. Thank you so much.
Next up is Karen Wooten. Welcome.
Thanks for this opportunity. I have a different topic altogether from everything we've discussed. I have a granddaughter in elementary school and a boy who identified as a girl. The teachers allowed him to go in the bathroom while she was in there, and she was a very modest child, mortified, very upset. And I just wanted to know if there was a policy that can be in place, or if the teachers can put aside time for those that identify different to go by themselves or put them in the right bathroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather Ray? Heather Ray? Welcome.
Thank you. 14 days to flatten the curve. 14 days. Well, these 14 days became more than 14 days, and all those toddlers have ever known, the babies that were born, are people with just eyes, not facial expression, just eyes and a mask. Ms. Holt brought up some, what I found to be the most important was the mental health of our children. So let me just remind you, and I've sent many emails about this, data. Results of the Brown University study regarding COVID lockdowns, the result was a drop of 23% in the learning composite, from a high of just under 100 to around 80 in 2020, and finally 70 in 2021. Verbal development dropped dramatically from an average of 100 in 2018 to just below 90 in 2020, and around 70 in 2021. Nonverbal development experienced a similar dip. This is a mental health issue.
Thank you. That is it for public comments today. Next up is going to be consent agenda. We'll wait for people to leave.
Sounds very enticing.
All right. Let's get back on the train here. Consent agenda. I'll take a motion to approve it.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
A second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent is approved. Old business. Mr. Carl Taylor, let's take a look at that flexible quarter schedule calendar, please. Mr. Rhodes, would you ask Mr. Massington just to ask them to go outside, please? You're welcome to go.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're having a great day. For old business, again, we're bringing you back the flex and early college calendars to look at. This flex calendar that you see before you again is the same one that was presented last month and needs your final approval. So I'll take any questions that you may have regarding this calendar.
This isn't the calendar that we have an issue with, I don't believe. So it's pretty easy. Any questions, comments, concerns on this one? All right, I'll take a motion.
I move we approve the Henderson County Board of Public Education flex calendar for the 2022-2023 school year for second reading.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's approved. All right. Next is the early college calendar. Now, we do have a little change there.
Yes, sir. We received some feedback from the early college staff members since the last board meeting. Some of that feedback related to the first semester, in that the original calendar that you looked at last month had 84 days in that first semester, and also the first workday did not align with the end of their 9 weeks grading period. And so we looked at making some changes to try to accommodate those requests. One change that we were able to make was to move the start date up to Thursday, August 11th. That adds 2 additional days to the semester. So now it's an 86-94 split. So it's still not perfect 90-90, but it made it a little bit better on that end. Also, as you look at October, the workday moved to October 17th. That aligns with the end of the 9 weeks, but it also perfectly aligns with a workday or a day off with Blue Ridge Community College as well. So the students that are taking college classes are also off that day. And so that alignment doesn't create division there between their Henderson County classes and their Blue Ridge classes. So those are the changes that were made since last month.
When does Blue Ridge start in August, 15th?
I believe it's August 17th.
So what do those students do that are taking college classes that, if, school's not in for 5 days?
The feedback that I've received from the early college is that they enjoy that time as a way to get to know the students and build, well, but also just to build the culture within their building, because once they start taking the Blue Ridge classes, then they lose that connection or that ability to do that in some cases. So those extra days just give them that opportunity to build those relationships, build the culture within their building.
What it in effect does, as Mr. Taylor is describing, is it serves as sort of an orientation period and helps those students transition and prepare. So they have an opportunity to identify where their classes are, what needs to be prepared for that. They do a lot of culture building activities because that's an important part of those elements. And the staff and student feedback has been that really helps them to successfully transition when the college schedule does start.
They're attending school.
Yes, ma'am, they are. That's correct.
So that kind of speaks volumes to me. You have teachers that are willing to come in 2 days earlier to be with these students to make the day or the days, the semester, more equalized, and they value that education and that time that they get with those students, that they are essentially giving up 2 days of their summer to come in and do that. Pretty important, I think, as representative, I was going to say as educators, but I'm not an educator. As a representation of an educator, that speaks volumes to me on how important it is that, I know that this isn't the calendar, but we be allowed to have the flexibility to do that.
Yep. But without that flexibility, let's go ahead and get this early college knocked out for second reading, unless anybody else has questions.
I move that the Henderson County Board of Public Education approve the 22-23 early college calendar for second reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is approved. New business A is done. So let's go on to this traditional calendar. Which, before you get started, we have sent out a letter, we've emailed our local representatives, we have sent it to everyone from Cooper on down. We've received no response from anybody on the calendar, so I guess it doesn't merit a response from them.
Ms. Holt, would you like to share just some of the conversations that you've had with some of our legislative leaders regarding the calendar?
Yes, I have spoken with Jake Johnson and with Tim Moffitt, and they're working on this. They're hoping that something can happen. I'm not going to stop bugging and pestering until I get a no. I just feel this calendar is such a disservice to our high school seniors in particular that, I think it's a disservice to all high schoolers, and middle schoolers that, well, I guess would we have testing in elementary as well, right? Yeah. So, huh?
Not at Christmas, in terms of end of grade or end of course. That all happens at the end of the school year.
Okay, but
there
not,
are
they don't do the mid
are
assessments,
assessments
yeah.
that take place on it.
So they're learning all of this stuff and then they go home for, you know, a little over 2 weeks and then have to come back and take a test on it. And the hugest issue is for our seniors, who we have hundreds of them that can graduate and start college in January, along with, well, really with any college, but especially our partners right here, Blue Ridge Community College, AB Tech, right now, they cannot enroll in that. They can't miss, because as a parent, I tried to do that. Can she just miss the first couple of days? And it was no. Like, they have to be here. We can't do it. And this calendar really is a disservice. I do not support it.
What is the start of the second semester? Is the 15th?
January 18th.
18th.
Yeah.
And go back to the other calendar. Well, do you have the clicker?
I did not.
So the college calendar
college one?
starts on, let me get back there. January 4th.
Yes, sir.
2 full weeks. So there's no way that those kids could actually matriculate into their college classes. And I don't know how our career and college promise classes are going to do it, to be honest with you.
Did anybody ever call Dr. Leatherwood and ask her to put her 2 cents worth in?
Yes, ma'am, we did, and the community colleges all support this decision. This is even statewide, they recognize that articulation would benefit. I'm not sure that there is a school system in the state that wouldn't like to see calendar flexibility, community college and public school units. But we've continued to advocate for it. This is not a new conversation. It's been going on for years right now. And what Mrs. Holt has just illustrated is there are certain years, based on when that falls, that are the most punitive. And this is an example of one, because it has to be the Monday closest to the 26th. And in this situation, you can't go to Monday the 22nd. You have to go to Monday the 29th. And so that calendar flexibility that this board has lobbied for and requested, especially when we were communicating with the state camp associations and otherwise, to have the ability to start just 1 week earlier. Again, we saw this happen just one time. Remember, last school year, we had the ability to start 1 week earlier, and all of those things were true. And so many people in our community said, why can't we do this all the time? And it was like, well, the General Assembly legislated that we could that one time. And that's the flexibility that we're looking for here. What I would add to that, unless there are other questions or discussions, is, though, it is really important that we do have an approved calendar, though, within the rules and the regulations, because parents and families do make plans accordingly. And we have to have the ability to coordinate the staffing, the professional development, and the operational calendars for that work. So with that in mind, the restrictions are what they are, the statute is what it is, but it is very important that we have a calendar approved to communicate to our parents and families.
If we approve it, then we lose Jake Johnson and Moffett, right? What's left? Maybe.
Well, it's a shame that it takes a pandemic for education to come before commerce, because that's really what this comes down to, this calendar. I mean, this is not an educationally sound calendar. We all agree with that, but it's based on commerce. It's based on businesses and tourism and everything other than our children. So it's really hard to approve that.
Have y'all ever heard or watched the movie The Untouchables? Great movie. Well, this is a while ago, but there's a scene, I think, that Sean Connery is talking to one of his newly found people that's going to help him, and he says, so what are you going to do now? So what are you going to do now? So then what are you going to do? So, and we've sent letters, and they aren't answered. Now what? I mean, and I'm thinking, like, have we contacted, and I'm like, Jay, that's stupid. But I mean, have we contacted other districts, other counties? Have we joined together, and do we have a letter from every Western North Carolina district in agreement? I mean, it just seems like we don't, it's just, go ahead.
Last year, there were resolutions sent from how many out of like 115? Yeah, there was a ton of them.
Okay.
So they know
This is really one man's,
It is.
decision, and his name is Phil Berger.
Yep.
And he's the head of the Senate of North Carolina. And for some reason, and I think it was just explained by Ms. Caskey, there's monetary reasons for why they don't want us to start earlier. We went and we got the letters from the Camp Association.
I was in that meeting, and they said that was okay.
We've done all of the things that, done all of the legwork. It just doesn't seem like there's enough power or push here in Henderson County to get it done, or in West North Carolina or in North Carolina in general, because this is where we're at. And I agree, we have to we have to approve a calendar at some point so that people can plan, you know, when they come back for schools, for camps, or whatever the case may be. But this is not ideal at all.
And I would caution parents that, I mean, if you have a majority that will pass this today, you know, our hopes and dreams are to start on the 15th. So try not to schedule anything after August 15th, because that's our dream, is to start then.
We can just end the semester before Christmas. It just makes sense.
Right.
All right. I think we beat it up.
Yep.
Questions, comments, concerns? All right, I'll take a motion.
Wait, I do have a question, I'm sorry.
Sure.
What would happen if we don't pass it?
Talk to him.
Sorry, sir.
Quite all right. Unfortunately, as Dr. Bryant alluded to, this is the worst-case scenario under the statute. This is a clear, unequivocal statute that says you must start on the Monday closest to August 26th, and mathematically, this is the worst-case scenario, Monday, August the 29th. And I have sat in board meeting after board meeting after board meeting and heard everyone agree that their local delegation and everyone they talk to agrees that starting in mid-August and finishing in May makes a lot of sense, and everybody's in favor of it, and it doesn't come before the General Assembly or the Senate. As your attorney, I have to tell you, you have to follow the law, and this is a law, and there's no wiggle room.
Okay, let me ask you, let me put it this way. What if districts, more than just Henderson counties, what if many districts did not approve this and just didn't vote?
I don't think that's a legal question. I think that's a civil disobedience question, and you can probably answer that as well as I could. They'd all be in violation of the law.
And so what are they going to do?
I don't know.
What did they?
I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Other schools who did that a while back.
So if everyone remembers, there were some districts that the law did not have a definition in the general statutes for year-round school. And some school districts took the position that you could have a flex calendar and still meet that definition. During COVID, the General Assembly took that away, and they statutorily defined a year-round school to be a school with the 4 intersessions, like the one you just approved, or a school that rotates the student body through different class schedules, through the same buildings and other things. So they took that argument away. I don't know personally of any district that is not following the traditional calendar law this year, because there no longer is a legal argument that you can do something other than start on August the 29th. And I wish I had a different opinion for you, but I don't.
So there you have it. Oh, boy.
There we go, sir.
All right, is there a motion for this calendar?
Ooh, we didn't even plan this.
This is great.
Man, see, I didn't read up on Robert's Rules of Orders on what I did if nobody wanted to make the motion. All right,
You can make the motion.
I'll make the motion. Yeah, good luck, right? Hold on, let me pull it up. I move that Henderson County Board of Public Education approve the 2022-2023 traditional calendar for first reading. Is there a second?
I second.
All right, let's do a voice vote. Yes, sir.
I feel compelled to say something before you vote.
Please.
To answer your question directly, if the board did not follow the law, you would be facing a potential injunction, and families could be told that their plans are going to have to change because the calendar that you passed that didn't comply with the law has now been enjoined. And it would be very easy, and it's my legal opinion that I don't mind giving in public session. Lawyers have to be very careful not to offer personal opinions. But again, starting school mid-August and ending in May makes a lot of sense to a lot of people. Well, that's not the law, okay? It is my legal opinion that you would be facing a potential injunction and folks could be finding out right before school started that in fact, school is going to start on the 29th. So I don't know of a legal way for you not to start on the 29th, and I don't think you would win any kind of a legal challenge if you tried to do something other than starting on the 29th.
And what if we don't have enough votes to
It would
make this
create a
happen?
lot of uncertainty, and you would not have a legal position to not start on the 29th.
In other words, our hands are tied, basically.
It's-
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, so yes or no, Mr. Bridges?
Yes.
Yes or no, Mrs. Case? No. Oh, boy. Yes, yes or no, Mrs. Holt?
No.
Yes or no, Mr. Egoff?
No, sir.
Yes or no, Mrs. Kasky?
Nope.
Yes or no, Dr. Evis? And it doesn't matter what I vote, I'm a yes. What's that, 4 3s have it, so no's have it. I'll know where to go from here. So,
I think this is very unfair to our parents.
I think so too. I think
I think we, not that we need to fold our hands and do nothing. But I think as a board, we need to be creative in what we can do and still be fair to our parents and let them know that we've approved a calendar for planning purposes.
Well, that's why I said just don't plan anything
Yeah, we
the
need to
week
give them a worst case.
of the 15th or
I
week of
think,
the
I
20th.
think what we're missing here, go back to the calendar, please, whoever's got it. There's really 3 dates that really affect this calendar. Spring break's not getting affected. Christmas isn't getting affected. Thanksgiving's not getting affected. We, by law, the only day that we have to take is Veterans Day, correct? So really the only thing that's getting affected, and I know there's some DP days in there and stuff, is really the start date and what the end date is. June 9th is, I believe, is the end date. I can't read that small, but, and so it's really those 2 dates. Everything else is the same.
Yes, sir.
Like, there might be a change here or there.
The only other change might be 2 workdays returning from winter break, because that would be the semester change. So to your point, you would take the 2 weeks at the end of the year, essentially every day after Memorial Day, and they would be moved to the 2 weeks in August.
Yeah.
And where we normally have 2 days right around Martin Luther, you'd move one of those work days up to the return in January, because that's when the semester would flip. If we were granted calendar
We
flexibility.
would still be out the 2nd and the 3rd?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me ask you guys, the 4 that voted no, like, what is next?
I want to wait till we hear back from the two that.
They have never gotten back to us formally.
Well,
ever.
Right, that's all of us write it.
Let's-
The 4 of
let's-
us write them then, or call them.
Okay, what else do you guys want to do?
So, I mean, I think it would, if it's failing, that we would just say to parents, like, hey, look at this traditional calendar that's here. If, just don't schedule anything the week of the 15th and the week of the 22nd, and then in January, you might possibly have the 3rd off. Just use this as an example, but the calendar failed.
And what did they say was the typical number of students who graduate mid-year?
It's several hundred, correct?
Yeah, a couple hundred.
It's pretty substantial.
Yeah. Let me ask this. Would it be appropriate for the school system to come up with, after the last meeting, I had a couple parents ask me, they're like, do you have like a form letter that we can send? What you want the school calendar to look like? Is that appropriate to provide to our parents if they so desire to sign and send in to our legislators? Because it feels like it's just us and everybody else is like, but nobody really looks at it until it's like the time.
Right. What is clear is that the board has the ability to advocate for what is best for students. The
Yeah.
board has that absolute opportunity. So I think probably what would make the most sense is to take the next month to make contacts back with your local delegation, including senators, and then have the administration bring you a resolution that would state all of those things. And in the resolution could certainly encourage folks to let their delegation know how they feel about it. So that would be the way to do that, would be just to provide it through a resolution of this board at your next meeting.
Okay. Our
Is it
next,
legal for us to send those letters to high school seniors that are being affected because they're 18?
No, what I'm suggesting is that you would actually do a resolution posted on your website that would have contact information. You would not be sending letters to high school seniors to send
But they could.
to folks.
But he said send out a letter.
yeah, so I had a parent that said, well, what do you want me to put on there?
Right.
And it's kind of a little bit, we live this and breathe this, and we've been doing this for a while, and so I was telling them about why we wanted to start August 15th, and so on and so forth. But maybe that's something, or,
I think we personally can do it. Maybe it's not a good idea that we have Dr. Bryant show that calendar, but you certainly can copy off the early college calendar and this one, and
show the differences.
yeah, let's contact parents on our own.
Okay, let's do this. Let's table this until March 7th. Okay, it's 3 weeks away. I think that you guys see what the will of the board is, so I'm gonna ask all of you to hammer down and see what you can get to us, as far as a resolution goes. I would, ask, the vice chair, Ms. Amy Lynn Holt, to, please use your considerable contacts to, contact these folks, keep us abreast of what's going on. I would then ask you guys to please contact Jake Johnson, call Senator Edwards, call,
Tim
who's the
Moffitt.
other one? Tim Moffitt. And I would really like for you to call Senator Phil Berger, because this is where the rubber meets the road. He's the one that is stopping all of this. And so if we want action, we need to take action, right?
Just off the subject, when does the Transylvanian School Board meet? Do you know?
I think it's later this week or early next week.
They meet twice a month. I think maybe their next meeting.
Twice a month?
21st.
We used to meet twice a month.
They meet on February 21st.
Could you, have they, well, we don't know this. I was just wondering if they had approved their traditional calendar. And if they could know that we did not approve the traditional calendar.
I have a contact there.
Your superintendent could call their superintendent. I don't recall if they've approved it yet or not. I've been sitting there when they approved it. I just don't recall.
Have you and the other superintendents, God, I got something in my eye, I'm sorry. All the superintendents feel the same way, the ones that I've talked to or you've talked to or whatever. Would you be willing to take the lead on seeing if any other superintendents and boards of education would be willing to join us in like maybe a joint resolution to send so that we have a little bit more firepower going out?
Absolutely. And I think to that point, it's just important to recognize this has been going on for a decade.
I know. I know.
Right?
That's right, but we have never,
This is the first time that it's been this bad since I've been on here. This is my fifth or
and we've
sixth.
never
So,
voted against approval, correct?
No.
Not that I'm aware of.
Right.
The other
So,
note that I want to give about Western North Carolina counties is just an understanding of some of Western North Carolina counties are eligible for the legal waiver to start earlier because of the number of days they missed because of inclement weather. We just always fall in that sweet spot of not missing that much school associated with it. So in terms of the generalized region, not everybody is in need of it with the same level of urgency that we.
you know what? You need to be calling more snow days then.
Yes, sir. I'd be glad to call one tomorrow if you need me to do so.
Hey,
Let me
I'm
get
in.
yelled at about that.
My wife says that every day. She's like 80 outside. She's like, want it snow?
All right, so this is just a year of first as the school board chair. I've never had a
Awesome.
calendar not be approved, so let's table that till the 7th, and then we will move on from there. So I think you're off the hook for a few minutes.
Am I? No, I think I.
Are you right back with us? What do you have? Oh, reassignments, tuition for out of county.
Yes, I just want to bring some updated information to you to make a decision upon how you want us to proceed. Working with Mr. Sosha in the Finance Department, I learned that based on this year's current expense per student, that our out-of-county tuition fee is not in line with what that expense is for our students. And so last year, the fee was $2,150. To be in line with this year's current expense, it would be $2,250.
So this is just the fee that people would pay to come into county, that from outside of the county, because our tax dollars here locally are going to funding those kids.
Yes, sir.
And that helps to supplement what we're going to be using.
Yes, sir.
It's a $100 increase. Any questions? All right, I'll take a motion.
I
Make
move
a motion
Ooh.
that Henderson County Board of Education approve the increase of out-of-county tuition to $2,250 for the 22-23 school year.
Second.
All right.
I was gonna let that side do it
I know,
since they
right?
were going.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'll see you in a few minutes. Don't
Sure.
get too comfortable. All right, E, we tabled.
What about D?
Oh, D, yeah, just a contract, sorry.
That's all right.
I always try to forget about you, Bernie. Sorry, man. They don't even-
Now, I'm going to stay right here next to Mr. Fender because he's going to be the one to answer any questions you may have. The contract before you, pursuant to our board policy, this contract over $90,000 for your approval is with AT&T for internet service. And the big key to this one is this is part of the E-rate service, which provides a huge discount. As you notice in the documentation, it's an 80% discount. So the contract is $218,000. 80% will be discounted, 20% is covered by DPI, which leaves us with zero. So I would ask that you would approve this contract for $0 on our behalf, for $218,000 on others.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Anybody like the motion to pay nothing
Sure.
for internet service?
I move that the Henderson County Board of Public Education approve the attached contract with the specified vendor.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's approved. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Sosha. All right. Next up are policies. And we've got about 41 of them. So this is what we're going to do. No, we are not going to table them. We, hopefully you all read through these and through some of the changes. A lot of the changes are extremely minor punctuation, dates, very minor revisions to the policy. Some of them do have some different language as it applies to COVID, as it applies to a couple of the other policies that are in there. So as I read through them, I wanted to see if I made some notes for myself. I didn't make any notes. Nothing really popped out at me at this time. And so how I'd like to run this, if you have, I'm going to start on this side of the room. If you have a question about any of these policies, let us know which one. We'll pull that out, go ahead and talk about it, then we'll approve them all at one time. Is that okay with everybody? So I don't have to go through each and every one of them? All right, questions? Ms. Case, you have questions?
Yes.
Okay.
On policy 5030.
5030, all right. Community use of facilities.
We had a problem with this a couple of years back, and I just want to be sure that, that the superintendent does follow the regulations of that the policy says here in 5030, and I don't think we'll have that problem again. So I'm not wanting to make necessarily a change to it, but I just want to reemphasize that we need to have that policy followed to the letter.
In so, Ms. Case, you're specifically referencing facility rental and facility use?
Right.
Yes, and so on our website, we have the process outlined for anyone that wants to use any of our facilities, and so this applies to all outside groups. So that could be an athletic team that's outside of our school system. It could be some other outside club, organization. Anytime they want to use our facilities, they go through that process of renting it, and then that goes to the principal for approval at that site if they are able to accommodate that request.
Want it followed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any others, ma'am? Nope. Ms. Holt? You good? Mrs. Caskey?
I'm good.
Dr. Evans?
Good.
Whew.
Wait a minute.
No, that's because.
Wait 1 second.
Why do we do this
For 2 years, I stood up there, and there were lots of questions, and everybody's letting Mr. Taylor off easy, so.
Well, what you have to understand is that first time that we read through these, like we were digging into them, we never had these policies before, right? He just lucked out that he came through and just came through some of the revisions. We had to make sure that that initial language was
That's right. It's
positive.
Do you need me to pick some, you want me to pick some out and just ask them questions? I can.
All right, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to make a motion to approve policies that are outlined 1 through 41 as presented with the noted revisions. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? You're done.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, sir. All right, return to learn. We hit it already, so let's go to ESSER. Dr. John Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I will move through the first couple of slides very quickly because you are familiar with them. But as we're on this particular slide, I do want to articulate something that does seem to be a misconception, at least at times in the public. And this is very important to say at least once, but maybe repeatedly. These dollars are in no way contingent on any decision that this board makes for how we operate.
Say that again.
These dollars are in no way contingent on any decision that this board makes for how we operate. In fact, the federal government hasn't asked us once what decisions we make in our daily board meetings. What we are required to do is only spend these dollars in those eligible use categories. So, again, these dollars have nothing to do with our school system operational decisions. They have everything to do with eligible use categories. And so I want to kind of clarify what those are, as I've shared with you before. Those bullets are just listed here. Do they involve coordinated activities with health departments? Sure. Do they involve the way in which we serve and support students? Absolutely. Do they involve educational technology and purchases associated with that? Absolutely. Have they been used to fund summer learning, mental health services, specifically address learning loss, create healthier, safer environments, especially when you think about PPE and otherwise? Most certainly, and to ensure the continuity of service. But again, there is a misconception that in some way, the decisions that the board makes, the operational decisions, specifically I'll use face coverings, it is not related to whether or not we receive ESSER dollars or we don't.
All right, I'm going to ask this. I'm going to dumb it down for Jay. So, in other words, if we say you have to wear a mask or you don't have to wear a mask, that does not matter whether we get the money.
That's correct.
So, if we say you have to wear a mask, we don't get money that we wouldn't have gotten.
That's correct.
Or if we don't say that, they don't hold money that we would have gotten.
That's correct.
Okay,
Am I saying that right?
I'm gonna dumb it down real far, and I'm
Yeah, I
gonna
didn't
ask
do a
specific-
good enough job.
I'm gonna ask specific
No, I thought you did a great
questions.
job.
Yeah,
I
you
want
did.
You did a
But
great
I
job.
just want to make this clear, because I have read through every one of those documents, and I have studied it backwards and forwards.
It doesn't matter.
So if we go against what Steve Smith says, if you call Steve Smith today and you tell him we do not want to, this week we voted mask coverings are optional starting tomorrow, and we do not wish to quarantine. And he says, nope, still have to quarantine. If we go against that, do we still get these ESSER dollars?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you sure we get these ESSER dollars?
I'm positive. We already have them. So, yes.
Okay. We're going to have to pay him back if we go against what he tells us to do.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
We just need to make it real clear.
You know,
And I appreciate that, though, because I think it is important to understand when we start talking about dollars, every public fund has expectations associated with it, but they're not contingent on some operational decision. And so as we talk about this slide is the most helpful when we say, how can these dollars be spent? And again, those are decisions that this board makes, that the administration brings to you, recommends, and otherwise. Why we're in this particular slide was, again, the board asked us to be very specific, not just about the ways in which the dollars have been allocated categorically or otherwise, but to talk numbers, to understand exactly what going a little quicker. There we go. It's going a little slow. So in order to see what dollar figures are associated with the funds that we have received through these federal monies, specifically, I want you to see the category of the funding source, the strategic use that the board has approved, and the budget number not to exceed. Because I think Mr. Craven had asked previously, he said, listen, I'm not comfortable with blank checks, and you've not written any, right? The board has not written any blank check. When you've made decisions, we have to craft a narrative. It has to be approved at the state level and then ultimately federal approval. We have to establish a budget number. And then that period of time is either through this school year or through a multi-school year. Because remember, some of these funds are available to us all the way until September of 2024. So when we look at this, let's look at it together. First and foremost, we conducted summer learning in 2021. What was the budget number for that? It was $2.75 million.
Okay, I got a question on that.
Yes, ma'am.
That was buses in, gas all in, or is that?
Every single expense associated with it.
That is so much lower than what I thought it would be.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm going to tell you, the ROI on those dollars
Oh, I know.
was extraordinary.
Yeah.
I think the bigger thing is we have to make sure we get more kids in, hopefully this summer.
You're gonna hear that. We've
I know we're
already
about
had
to
people
get there.
asking us about it.
Yeah.
And I think the driving feature for us will be staffing availability, as is anything else. You know, again, people's bandwidth to work. But if you remember, we paid teachers the way they deserve to be paid last summer. And we were fortunate to have so many successful experiences, tremendous partnerships, but your budget number is $2.75 million. Retention bonus, that's paid this month. Every eligible employee who's in one of those permanent categories will receive, again, $2,000 for full-time employees, $1,000 for part-time employees. Remember, you're the largest employer in the county. That costs approximately $4 million, all in. So when you start talking about the taxes and the retirement contribution and all the things that we have to do when we pay people, that's the case. In terms of the bus driver recruitment bonus and the substitute teacher recruitment bonus, and you heard Mr. Rhodes briefly talking about that earlier today and the success of those programs, it's specific to think about those between now and June 30. That's what those budget dollars are associated with, because we may not continue to have those shortages, but we also want to make sure that these strategies are effective. Does this help us move the needle? Does this help us to fill spots? Are we seeing stronger staffing capabilities by paying people in extra ways? And so the monies that you've approved are through June 30, and we'll of course have conversations around what those monthly costs are as our payroll comes in, and then you can make decisions about how that is moving forward. Letters training, I want you to note this, and Dr. Fry's going to correct me if I'm wrong, but that $1.7 million is reflective of an ongoing commitment that is multi-year. Because remember, you're paying for substitute teachers in order that our teachers can receive that professional development in person, so that they're not doing two jobs at one time. This is state mandated science of reading training. Every elementary school teacher in the state of North Carolina is part of a series of cohorts, 1, 2, or 3. And that training that you're providing coverage so that they can do that while they're at work, okay? ESSER 3, which is that third phase of dollars that we've received, we already have budget narrative associated with Summer Learning 2022, and I want to talk about that budget number for a second because we've just been talking about the effectiveness of that and the number of people that are eligible to do it. When we first were doing our planning, we were planning on it getting smaller. It may be that the value there is that it shouldn't get smaller, it should get bigger, or that it should serve the same number of students or otherwise. That target population previously was about 20%. It was, again, required by the language in statute. But the current budget number right now is less than the one that we utilized this past year. TAs to support quarantine students, that may be a number that doesn't have to exist future forward. That'd be pretty exciting. This is a multi-year cost associated with what you see here. So you're looking at a 3-year look when we thought about the need to utilize. That's what we drafted in the narrative, but we can revise the narrative now that there might not be quarantine students that have to be supported in that way. We made a commitment from our federal dollars to fund nursing positions over a 3-year period. That's the $1.12 million. There are arts education initiatives that you funded through this, extra employment pay for class coverage and planning period, and again, extended out to be able to provide those coverages, and then additional social worker positions through some grant monies that you see listed here. So what we're trying to do is meet the board's expectation of saying, so what are we talking about? Remembering again those dollars. We had about $9.9 million in ESSER 2 funding total. We had about $22 million in ESSER 3 funding total, and we were required to use at least 20% of that money on strategies that address learning loss. And so what we look forward to doing is continuing to not only share with you the budgeted slides, but then the fourth column being what are the actual costs associated with that? Because, for example, we know that the substitute bonus pay is going to be one that we want to track. We want to track what that costs us, and we want to see if that is improving the fill rates and the opportunities that exist there. So I'm glad to kind of pause right there for a second and answer any questions you might have to make sure that this is meeting an understanding of how those dollars are being allocated.
Can we go ahead and like vote on or whatever to up the budget amount for this summer from 1.74 to, I mean, at least back.
You may be speaking Dr. Fry's love language. I'm not.
We need to find bandwidth first, right? Like, how many teachers do we have?
And I would also, Dr. Bryant, with your permission, would like to add that we have 2 additional pots of money that have been given to us by the state that are, in addition to what you see here, we have 2 pots of money that will be going towards 2 programs. One is called Summer Bridge, and that's a program that will target transitional programs for rising 6th and rising 9th graders. And then the other one is a career accelerator program where we will bring in students this summer to focus on their different career pathways, give them a taste of several, and allow them to explore the ones they're most interested in. So I can bring you those specific numbers, but when you add them, it gets us close to what we saw last summer.
Do you think that by our April board meeting, you'll be able to be ready to kind of see what your summer's going to look like?
Yes, sir. In fact, we already have a draft calendar and a projection of work and are working towards creating an infographic to share with families because there are so many things going on this summer. We want to make sure we're all clear on what it is we're talking about.
Yeah, I think our March 7th board meeting might be a little bit too soon, but our April board meeting might be.
I would appreciate the April board meeting. Thank you.
Perfect.
I don't see a problem with getting teachers because I've heard so many, especially elementary teachers, that say, well, if I knew it was going to be like that, I would have volunteered to do it.
Oh, good.
I think that's going to increase without having to be a worry.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, and I would like to see it a little more broad because, like, for instance, you know, my daughter didn't get an invitation and, I mean, she's pretty far behind. And I mean, they may know we go to the beach during the summer, so don't bother. I don't know. But, you know, I just feel like, you know, if we can cast that pretty wide net, I mean, that would just be so, the results from it is crazy. I mean, the amount that these kids learned was awesome.
But we want to be careful with that and not become babysitters.
Absolutely. We want to replicate so much of what we did last year because, as Dr. Bryant shared, those returns on investment were huge. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Just one other slide.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Just kind of note these. So when we talk about possible future allocations, again, one of the pieces that we bring in is we know hiring season is beginning, and I can turn and look over my shoulder and know Mr. Rhodes is going to want to be on the street in the most competitive environment possible because that right? Right, Mr. Rhodes? Yeah, that's exactly right. So when we start talking about how do we recruit, retain, and be the most competitive, some of the things that we're discussing and will continue to be discussing are the ways in which these dollars can be used. Again, maintaining the continuity of your workforce as well as emphasizing how we move the school system forward. And I just want to share one more piece about that with regard to the technology upgrades. We know that the vast majority of the equipment in a classroom is replaced on inconsistent schedules and often has inconsistent funding streams. Maybe it's related to PTO, maybe it's related to a teacher using their own money. But I'll talk about when you think about smart boards or you think about overhead projectors or you think about Elmos or otherwise. Imagine a space where Mr. Fender says to you all, what I want is a multi-million-dollar investment to touch every classroom, to bring everything up to grade so that every teacher had the most current resources available and that we did that in a way that could be meaningful moving forward. We know that that's going to matter, but that's big ticket. You know, we have over 1,000 regular instructional classrooms in our system. And when you start talking about spending several hundred or thousands of dollars in those classrooms, that can be expensive. But we are going to be working to share that with you because we want that to be a meaningful opportunity for our schools. So more to come on that.
Awesome.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Next up, construction update, Mr. Carl Taylor. Should we pause for a second? Take just a couple second break, okay?
Yes, sir.
If anybody needs to use the restroom or anything. ready? Fire it up.
Okay.
All right, welcome back. We are now going to go through our construction update. Mr. Carl Taylor.
Yes, Board. Glad to be able tonight to give you an update on some of the projects that we have going on across our district. And so maintaining tradition, starting with Hendersonville High School. If you've driven by there, you've noticed some changes out there in the stadium. One change being that a new press box is up and in place. Then the second change, of course, if you look out at the field, are potentially mounds of dirt or holes that maybe you see, and that's where they've been updating the drain lines, inspecting drain lines, and making sure that everything underneath the surface is conducive for the turf once that time comes for installation and the grading work. So there's you a couple of pictures again of that press box and some of that drainage and grading work that is going on out in the stadium. As we move inside the Stillwell building, we're going to start with the auditorium. This is the space that's really, as you walk in it, you look at it and you go, this is the closest to being done. You can see clearly how clean the drywall looks, and also you can see in the smaller picture where the lighting is being prepared to go up. I walked through Stillwell and this auditorium space on Friday. When I first walked in the auditorium, that lighting still looked how it does in that picture. When I came back in about 15 minutes, it was up. And so they are making great progress in that space.
Supposed to be done by the end of this month, correct?
So the students are going to begin getting access at the end of the month in preparation for their senior play. So they are going to be able to do rehearsals in there. I believe there's still going to be some work going on beyond that, but everything in terms of being used for the senior play is on track.
Because, I mean, it's clearly you don't have the lighting on the floors, you don't have the carpeting, you don't have the seats, the new seats that we ordered and all that jazz. But everything else, as far as the sound and lights and all of that's ready to go.
It will be in time for the senior play. So like I said, at the end of the month, they've worked out a plan to where the students are going to be able to get access to do the rehearsals.
Yep.
But there will be some other work going on. What specific work will be done by the end of the month and what they're still going to be doing after that, I can find out at our meeting tomorrow.
And they're going to have to access it from the outside because they can't access it from the inside yet.
Yes, sir. All right. As we move to the third floor, the construction company is working really third floor down. And so again, if you were to walk through the third floor, you would see pictures much like this to where, again, those spaces are very close to being finished. Drywall, paint, the casework being installed, tile in the bathrooms being put down. And so that third floor is moving along quite well. As you work your way down, you know, there's some steps behind. So for example, if you look up the ceilings here, you can see the grid work in. As you move down to second floor, first floor, they're just getting started on that type of work.
And we're still on time to be done with this by the start of school year next year.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Exciting, isn't it?
It almost like it's not real, but it's really exciting.
Yes, yes, indeed. All right. Here, this table shows us just an overview of other projects going on. The ones that are in green are the Mrts projects. The two at the bottom in red are through the funding here by our board. So as we look at the ones in green with Mrts, again, those are ones that we've talked about in previous meetings where paving and roof replacement, those are really on hold. Paving for the weather to warm up, and then roof replacement. Those are some of the hardest materials to get. And so we're still on hold for once those materials arrive. Auditorium seating, we had a pre-construction meeting last week out with the principals from North and Apple Valley to discuss that work beginning. And so March 1st is when that work is to begin at North Henderson. It's about a 2-week demo period and then a 2-week installation. Once they finish demo at North, they will transition to Apple Valley. So really by the 1st of April to mid-April, both of those auditorium spaces should be updated with new seating. And then they will transition here to our boardroom. With the warehouse, again, with maintenance, that is on schedule for a June completion or estimated completion date. The video management, the security cameras for our middle and high schools, that contract has been awarded. We had a pre-construction meeting for that last week as well. And so they are in the process of looking at materials, the wiring, the cameras, and all the other hardware that will be needed for that project to give us a firm date of when they can begin and when they can estimate that work to be completed. Oh, sorry, I did the auditoriums ahead of them. And then the final one, one other one that fits into the athletic improvements that you all approved for this year's current budget. We're looking at ADA compliance at the stadiums at East Henderson and West Henderson. Those are bleachers that are not wheelchair accessible at this point in time. And so we have posted an RFP. They were able to visit those sites last week, and so we expect those proposals to be in February 24th so that we have an idea of what that work would cost to make those bleachers wheelchair accessible. One project also that I can give you a quick update on that's not listed here that you all approved for this year's budget are the lights at North Henderson for the baseball and softball fields. We have received quotes from Musco Lighting for both of those fields, and those prices have gone up tremendously since the last time we installed lights at West Henderson and East Henderson softball fields. And so they are not within the budget that you all approved, and so at a future meeting we will need direction from you on how you would like us to proceed with the lighting at those two fields.
Can you talk to us about the flooring at HHS? There was a Times News article on the floor separating.
Yes, so the school made us aware once they observed where the floor as it's drying out, because of course that space is now conditioned. That's something that floor was not used to. That is the floor that has been in that, my understanding is that's the floor that was in the gym when it was built. And so this summer we did resurface it or refinish it, but with it now being conditioned, the humidity level has dropped tremendously in that space, and as a result the wood is drying out, which is creating some separation between some of the planks across that floor. So the school has helped us stay or to monitor it to make sure that it's not a safety concern for the athletes, but it is something that we will need to address.
What about the entrance to West Henderson? Changing the entrance?
That project is one of the ones that was listed on the MRTS with the county. At this time, there's been no movement on that project as it stands. We ultimately we have two, the advanced planning and design for the bus garage, moving that project forward, and then ultimately similarly with West Henderson.
That was my next question. Bus garage, where are we at on bus garage? I know last time we were looking at sites.
Yes, sir. It ultimately will require a property transaction. And this board and the Board of Commissioners have had conversations around that, and it requires the advanced planning and design is the commitment of the property necessary to do that. So I've been in regular communication with the county manager about the importance of that. So remember, the advanced planning and design that could take place this spring is what will prepare us to be in construction next year. So that'll be our hope moving forward.
Okay, so we're still on track though?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions for me at this time?
Well, what did we decide about the lighting? You said we needed.
They're going to bring that back to us. It's more than double what we had estimated.
Is that for the baseball fields?
Baseball and softball. It's more than doubled.
Doubled up?
More than doubled.
Yeah, I thought you said you were awaiting decision on the board or something, and then we asked another question. I didn't know if, what we were doing.
So yes, so what I can do is, if it's your direction, I can work with Mr. Socia on looking at what those numbers are and what the options would be of what that would look like.
Please.
Okay, gladly. All right. Any other questions for me at this time?
Thanks, sir.
All right. Also, I'd like to turn over to Mr. Fender. I think he would like to give you an update on this space as well.
Sure.
I am happy to inform you after many months that we will be doing away with this whole spider web of
nice
cords and everything for our next board meeting. We will be starting to test that next week with the wireless mics, and hopefully we'll be in a good place for March. And if I might, I do want to give some serious kudos to these two guys back here that continuously work to try to bring this.
Yeah, they're superstars.
Thank you, Matthew and Grant.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you. So we're getting rid of the Tupperware that you can see on TV, or the tote. Not Tupperware, sorry, I've got totes.
Mr. Fender's first class. He's not going to leave that out here.
Yeah, well, my house, we call it a sled when it's
right.
All right, next up is equity update, Dr. Wendy Frey.
Yes, thank you so much. It's my pleasure to bring to you the equity update this evening.
So first of all, we had the pleasure of visiting Hendersonville Middle School this week, or last week, and as part of that visit, they allowed us to spend some time in their band room and also in their strings program. And further discussion, Mr. Craven said, well, what have we been able to purchase? I know that this board has allocated money the past couple of years. So per his request, I'm sharing that with you tonight as part of the update. Wanted you to see, this is one of the instruments that you purchased, and it's larger than Miss Sophia Wertenberger. She was playing it with pride when we visited the classroom. Yes. So for the past couple of years, here is the long list of instruments that this board has made available to our students. We cannot visit a band or orchestra classroom without our teachers being so thankful and appreciative. And then some of the board members were able to witness that firsthand at Hendersonville Middle. That's a lot. That's a long list. And I want to thank Mr. Socia for putting that together this weekend. It was larger than I had even imagined myself, and I knew what the amounts were. So anyway, on behalf of the instructors and the students, thank you for your continued commitment. And you'll see 2122, the list is not finished. We are still processing requests.
So awesome.
Yes, it is. Also remember from Dr. Bryant's presentation earlier in ESSER, we have an additional pot of money that's going to support our arts programs, that $200,000. If you'll remember, you approved us to use those funds to purchase instruments for sixth graders and also to allow our teachers to conduct arts fairs at the elementary schools, and those have been a big hit. Remember those mouthpieces also that I shared with you at one of the meetings, that's a part of that as well. So thank you.
Money should never be an object for a kid that wants to play a musical instrument in this school system.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much. So teaching as a profession, another favorite thing for us to talk about. So first of all, I want to tell you that our program has generated some statewide attention. Our Director of Career and Technical Education, Mr. Scott Moore, received an email from an NCDPI state consultant asking if she could come visit and bring several folks with her to take pictures, videos, because they have heard that our teachers are doing a wonderful job and they want to come see what we're doing. So we're always happy to brag on our programs. I wanted to share some pictures with you. On the left is one of our Teaching as a Profession Level 1 students from Hendersonville High School, who is now going into Bruce Drysdale twice a week to work with students. Then on the right is a level 2 student. You know, now that we're in second semester, we have some level 2 students. And this is Nick Knox from East High working at Upward Elementary.
That's cool.
I love these pictures. Isn't that sweet? And then a couple more pictures. On the left are some students from East High when they were in the level 1 class, and one of their assignments was to interview both veteran and new teachers to find out their why. Remember I talked about earlier the national board teachers really having to think about their why. It is so important, I think, that we continue to share with our students our why we got into this profession and the value and those rewards that it can bring. And then on the right, this is one of our level 1 students. Let me tell you what her class studied. Piaget's Stages of Cognitive Development. I'm pretty sure that I didn't have that until my second or third year in college. And they're getting it in level 1. So based upon what they learned, they then applied it, and she taught this class at Hendersonville Elementary, and from what I'm told, received rave reviews from the teacher. Look at those faces. So thank you for your continued support of this program. And finally, I want to share with you some work we're doing with our principals. I can't say enough good things about the administrators, principals, and assistant principals in this district. Not only are they managing in tough times, but they are leading and they are the instructional leaders of the school. So we have been talking about the progression of writing and how our students and the writing that they're responsible for needs to increase, and that rigor needs to increase. I want you to look at some of our principals with all the thousands of things that they have to do. Look at the commitment that they're showing to this activity. Let me tell you what it is. Do you see all those colored pieces of paper? We gave them a writing sample from students in kindergarten through 12th grade and asked them to work in teams, and they're with, for the most part, they're with feeder schools because we want to really foster that conversation. And we asked them to put those writing samples in order from kindergarten to 12th grade. And the conversation that ensued after that. The follow-up activity to that was where we gave them assignments and then asked them how writing could be incorporated into those assignments. And then at the end of that, we spent an hour on this work with both the principal group and the assistant principal group. And it's our commitment that when we provide professional development, we want to leave them with things that they can use tomorrow when they go back to school, because we think that's so important. So we left them with a list of look-fors and ask-abouts, and really emphasized the fact that you don't have to have a degree in English to ask good questions about writing and to hold high expectations, and that's something that we can all be committed to doing. I just want to show you some of the pictures that we took. Look at those principals. You know what's on their plate. And look at their commitment to continuing to hold our students to high expectations. They're the best. Look at that. I think that team on the left may have won, Dr. Bryant. Am I correct?
I commend you for addressing the vertical articulation with writing, because when our writing goes up, other knowledge and skills and content will
I appreciate you saying that, and it's because of you, Dr. Revis.
No.
No, I'm going to go ahead and say it. It was probably 20 years ago when you brought Learning Focus to this district. I think it was, wasn't it? 15 to 20? Max Thompson came and spoke to our administrators and visited our schools and said, this is the most important work you'll do. So thank you for starting us on that journey.
Were the principals surprised? I bet they were.
Surprised of the
writing sample.
Yes, and what, the instructional services team has this unique opportunity to visit elementary, middle, and high schools. But when you're working in a particular school, you just aren't afforded that opportunity. But what we're able to see is fifth grade writing, the level of rigor that is there. We wanted to really make sure that then we continue to increase expectations, and we will do that. We will do that. This was just a previewing activity we gave to principals at one of our meetings prior to the professional development, and it was an excerpt from a student, and we said, what grade do you think this was from? It actually was a second grade sample, but then when we met with principals, we had a few principals who got this right, and we said, so tell us, what was your thinking behind? Why did you know this was second grade? So that was a great discussion as well. I could go on and on about this all night, but it's all here. And the main thing I wanted to leave you with is what I've already said, is that our principals are leading, and they're leading this most important work, and I appreciate all of their efforts. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Rhodes, child care update.
Thank you, sir. So in an effort to get everyone home for Valentine's Day, we made $11,553 in the month of January. So we continue to make a profit in our child care program, and so we're excited about the future. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
It's perfect. Like I said, I don't really want to make a profit and a break even. We certainly don't want to lose money on this, and as I've said for the last several months, you're doing a bang-up job on this, so appreciate it.
I appreciate that. And just real quick,
Those two gentlemen sitting over there at the end, they sometimes like to fly under the radar.
Sure.
But I want you to know how lucky we are to have a chief financial officer and a chief technology officer of that caliber. And I get to work with both of them a lot. And I got to tell you, we're blessed to have them. Now, Rick, he's been telling me privately that he'd like more opportunities to speak in front of the board.
Oh, okay.
So I only
can make
felt
that
it,
happen
I only
for
felt it my duty to inform you of that. So any opportunities we can give Mr. Fender.
All right.
And he's also taking some dancing lessons.
Oh.
I'm just letting you know that as well.
Program highlight?
Hey,
Hey,
these guys are awesome. I just thought you ought to know that.
I have a question. What is our pay range in childcare now that we're making a profit?
So,
Like pay range for employees?
so as you know, we just, the pay scale just went up for the limited amount. Right now, it's $13 an hour for the bottom of the pay scale.
Okay,
So that bottom of that pay scale, and again, Mr. Sosha's been working on recreating those pay scales, and so he could be able to answer that a little bit better than I can right now.
It'll be 15 come June, right?
Correct.
July.
Yeah, it'll be 15.
okay, good.
And the child care salaries aren't the lowest tier that we have. It starts out at our custodians and then our bus drivers. Child care and child nutrition are a step further than that. So as we tier them up, they start a little bit more than 13 an hour. They'll be a little more than 15 an hour come July.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, financial statements, Mr. Bernie Sosha.
I'll just keep talking.
Yeah, just keep talking, unless you want to yield to Rick over there.
Mr. Campbell says I cannot.
Okay.
Pretty good.
I merely read policy.
Okay, couple reports, local current expense, other restricted funds. As of January 31, our revenues so far for the year, just over $22 million, and expenditures at $16.8 million. And as you may be expecting, maybe a large change in January because of the salaries. There was a change to the salary schedules that did go in effect in January. The retro pay has not yet hit. That will hit in February and March. And all of the bonuses that went out in January, those were either state paid or federal paid. So they are not things that hit our local budget, but there were a lot of bonuses that went out in January. The other report is the Enterprise Fund. Child Nutrition Program is operating with a balance of $769,000. And I'll just point out, child care, they are operating with a positive balance of $1,014,000. Operationally, that is an impact on the revenue side. As you can imagine, there's been a lot of COVID money that has come in that has created this wonderful balance that we have operationally for the year. But if you have any questions specifically about that, I'd be glad to answer them.
Does that breakfast come out of what that they're having at some schools? The breakfast.
The second one?
Right now, all breakfast and lunch is covered through the USDA for continued through the end of this year.
End of the year, right?
What's that?
You haven't seen that they're going to stop that from the USDA.
Well, it's in place until I believe it's September of next year.
September?
I think that was the date.
Yeah, and that's where this board's gonna have to really buckle down, and if they don't make any changes to the grants, especially as child nutrition goes. Costs are going up for not only food costs, but wages, and so we need to make sure we're on top of it.
Yeah, these numbers look wonderful right now. Like I said, there's a lot of COVID money in there,
Absolutely.
and the operations are going to be heavily impacted because these are two categories where salaries have increased about 40%.
So are you saying that in reference to, like the meal prices are gonna need to?
You know, something's gonna have to happen because, I mean, first of all, we all know all food's gone up. Food prices have gone up, right? And then if our salaries are up 40%, you don't have an option. You know, I feel the same way about child nutrition as I do childcare. I don't want to make $1.
Right.
But I don't want to lose money on the program. So we're gonna have to keep an eye on that. Hopefully they can taper us off and not just cut us off come September, because I think it's gonna be eye-opening at that point. We'll have to re-implement some plans that we were doing in like Apple Valley and North with a second chance breakfasts and things of that nature. And,
Yes, sir.
but there's a lot of moving pieces there. We just have to look out for here in the next 6 to 9 months. So. Any other questions for Mr. Sosha? Thank you, sir.
Appreciate you guys.
General operations.
Yes, sir, Mr. Craven and members of the board, just would draw your attention to what the calendar of events is for coming up, and want to just talk briefly and say it out loud again. February 25th, remember, that was a calendar revision based on our inclement weather experience. It is now a remote learning day. That's asynchronous. That means students are going to be utilizing choice boards, and we've rescheduled all the professional development that got canceled for that day. So staff are working that day. Regimented professional development, and students will be working asynchronously with choice boards. And then I just bring up again, March 7th to the 11th is We Are Hope Week. Remember, that is our partnership with the Hope Coalition about substance abuse awareness in our community. A lot of activities led by our student government leaders and otherwise taking place. Various boards in this community, including City Council and the Board of Commissioners, will be adopting resolutions. This board will be presented a resolution to adopt in our March meeting as well. And then you may remember we've done banner signings in the past. Those happen at the courthouse later in that week. So we'll be sharing more information with you as we move forward to that. And then a final reminder, spring break for us now is the 3rd week in March. And so we will actually experience spring break next month following our board meeting. Glad to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, before we adjourn, Ms. Case, I believe you have something that you'd like to address.
Yeah, Dr. Fry, I appreciate so much you saying that vice principals do instructional, because our General Assembly said they didn't get a certain bonus because they didn't have anything to do with the instructional. Well, they got slighted a lot on their bonus, and I would just like to bring up somehow if this board could do something to make those vice principals see how appreciative we are of the things they have done. I mean, if it's just, $300 or whatever Bernie can drag up, and, I'd like to make that something that Bernie looks into and John looks into, because they do instructional stuff. And they are, they're behind a lot of the things that go on in the schools. I think there's 30 of them. Is that right, Carl? There's 30 of the vice principals, so yay or nay?
Yeah, I think, why don't you bring us back something? I know that part of the state was handing out those funds. This would be a local.
They said they didn't, they're not instructional.
This would be a local expense that we would need to incur. So,
Well, would it be ESSER?
well, we could probably go a lot of different ways with this, but what I'd like to do is let us know who received the $300 bonus that she's referring to. And then if there's a pot of money or something there that we can look at for those folks that are clearly doing instructional work to help them out, then I'm certain this board would be willing to look at that.
If I could make just a couple of points for context on that.
Sure.
I think that'd be really helpful, and I'll answer the questions that are mentioned. Just as Mrs. Case was saying, when the state determined these eligible bonuses, the categories were different based on how you were defined. So principals received certain dollars, teachers received certain dollars, instructional support personnel received certain dollars, and as Mrs. Case is noting, assistant principals, for the most part, would have received just 2 of the eligible pots. One of them is they gave $1,000 to everybody if you're just an employee, and they gave $500 to anybody if you made less than $75,000. And so those folks would have been eligible for that. Teachers historically received EVOS bonuses or were eligible for it, and the state took all of that EVOS money and just broke it up evenly across all teachers and gave everybody $300. And then they took the principal bonuses and they divided those evenly and they gave them to principals. And so APs, as Ms. Case mentioned, didn't fall into one of those categories, which does not validate their work or their importance. There were, though, it's important for this board to remember, other categories of employees that didn't receive those types of bonuses as well. So it's not just assistant principals. The other 2 pieces are ESSER eligibility. If we go back to that previous slide, this would not be an eligible expense because the board would be choosing to pay people simply because the state left a category out. So it would be a local expense. And if you were to determine some dollar figure that you wanted to explore, it would be a local cost, and certainly the board has the discretion to do that. You could award those bonuses as you see fit.
Why don't you put something together for us for March 7th for a $500 bonus for those APs?
Did I hear you correctly saying that they were not the only category of employees who?
Correct.
Yes.
That's correct. Like, I'll use, for example, one of the challenging ones for us, and I've shared this with other folks here, is our teacher assistants are not defined as instructional support personnel by the state's definition.
But they are.
But they are, right? And we have over 200 teacher assistants in our system, none of whom received that instructional support personnel bonus. And we, of course, would argue against that, exactly in the same way that we would argue against that our APs were left out of their, what we call, value of their service. So we would be the first people to advocate that everybody should have received those dollars. But again, as Mr. Socia mentioned, those were state monies that came down, and the state directed us to pay for them, and they gave us the money. So if this board chooses to pay additional bonuses to anyone in our school system, that would have to be a local expense.
So just quick math, if you did $300 for TAs, you're looking at $60,000. If you do $500 for APs, higher, we got more than 200?
Is there any way we could just kind of get a list of which employees that were overlooked with the state?
I think it would be most helpful. We'll be prepared to share you the last one. We'll send you the screencast that Mr. Rhodes sent to all employees, and the grid that the state provided us that just showed, like, if you're defined as this category, this is what you get. If you're defined in this category, this is what you get. So it helps you see it was not equal across the board. And so if you are in one of those categories, and most people fell into I'm an employee of the school system, I get $1,000, and I make less than $75,000. That's where most people fell.
And we're getting ready to write a $4 million check at the end of this month, correct? For bonuses.
And that's regardless of job classification.
That's regardless, right? We didn't. It's still a $4 million check.
Absolutely, but we're really proud of that one because that one doesn't say what's your category. That one just says, are you a full-time employee? We appreciate you, and every one of them gets $2,000. Yes, ma'am.
All right, so just bring us some of that information if you wouldn't mind for the March 7th meeting.
Yes, sir. We'll be glad to do so.
Mr. Egoff?
Yeah, I have something I want to, it's been on my mind, and I should have brought it up earlier when people were here. We have a closed session that starts, an hour and a half beforehand. The board knew, I think, that maybe there were going to be some times, some jockeying of some times. We asked our attorney at the time, can you read that sentence again or paragraph again for me?
Sure. So what your board policy on public comment says is that during the public comment period, the board chairperson will recognize speakers in the order in which they signed in. Substitute speakers will not be permitted, and speakers may not donate any portion of their time to another speaker.
Okay. I have a lot of respect for our chair, and he asked for that to be spelled out because none of us were sure. And he actually apologized to us in that closed session that he had done that before and he had made a mistake and that was wrong for him to do that. I just want to make sure that, there may be some email. I want to just go on record to say, we're not out here and Mr. Craven, our chair, is not here to, to say no to anybody. I mean, he did inquire into what our policy was. And if there are any emails or talk going back and forth, even social, that, that we're out to, or the chair was not nice to, so it wasn't that at all. We discussed, we saw the policy, we learned it, we read it, he apologized for it, and then when the time came, that's what happened, and that follows our policy. So I just want to, give a hand to Blair for handling it.
Thank you, I appreciate it. The last time that it happened, it kind of caught me off guard, to be perfectly honest.
Right.
It was, during 2 hours worth of public comment, and I said, sure, I should not have. I received a couple of emails regarding that. I looked at the policy myself before I even asked you today, so I knew what the policy said. And I heard that this was what was going to happen. We were going to have 30 people sign up and give someone the time. You know, I just don't think we're here to do that.
Well, policy says that.
Sure. And so I did what I did.
Can we talk about public comment, though? Because we started having digital public comment.
Yeah.
Because we could not have people, you just couldn't have more than, it was like 10 people at a time, right, in the room, something like that. It's my request that we move from digital public comment and stop that. That if people have something they want to talk to us about, that they come in here and talk to us, as opposed to like me reading 3 hours worth of emails on my weekend before, you know, if it's that important, they need to come and talk to us.
So we only have to have digital comments, from what I remember, if we're not meeting in person.
Correct.
Correct. So what you did was a policy accommodation
Yep.
for folks that couldn't come to the meeting.
Yep.
So as a local policy decision, you decided to allow, you know, that digital comment. What you did was that you actually, as a board, agreed that you would read those comments and you would treat them as public comment. So I think the point is well taken, from Ms. Holt, that individual citizens are free to send you emails at any time, send you letters at any time. If you take this away, all you're doing is saying we're not going to commit to reading every single one of those prior to a meeting. So certainly there is no reason to continue it any longer than this board feels it's necessary. And I think that the administration probably would appreciate a consensus of the board. It's not a policy, it's just a practice in light of COVID.
Stephanie, would you mind? Does anybody mind if we listen, we receive hundreds of emails, not just digital submissions, right? That come from the Monday before the board meeting till Monday at 9 o'clock. Is anybody here, as long as we are meeting in person, are you guys against not getting those digital comments? Speak now. All right.
We can get them, but we just won't be required
To read them. Well, what I'm not going to have is I'm not going to have Stephanie post it online, and Grant and those guys post it online Monday at 9 o'clock the week before, compile all these, and myself and Dr. Bryant and Stephanie get hammered all day long. And then we send them out to you guys once a week, I believe, right? Or Fridays or something like that. Fridays and Monday mornings. So it would help Dr. Bryant, myself, and Stephanie tremendously if we just eliminate it. If you have something to say, either email us or come in here and speak in person. Good with it?
Yes, that would.
Good. Best practice done. All right. Anything else? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
And
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?